welcome back. I know it has been forever. I don't think I've ever sat down and actually like full on made some kind of sit down, chill, one-on-one talk. Or at least I can't remember, it's been that long. But this has been a long awaited video of my testimony. Now keep in mind that testimonies are very personal, and if you were an aspect of my life, your perspective of your part in my life is going to be different from my perspective. So obviously I'm not going to give any like full details about people in my life. This is a personal testimony about myself, my relationship with God, and restoration, all that kind of stuff. So personal perspective, so be respectful. There's enough hate in the world, none of it is needed here. And with that, let's get okay. So let's start from the beginning, because that's how stories go, right? Testimony today is being told simply because I have had a lot of questions about it through Instagram. Obviously, if you've been following me for only the last 3 years or so, you would have seen a huge shift in my whole entire lifestyle. But you know, like I've had a lot of messages, like DMs and stuff saying, oh, you know, welcome, kind of like a welcome message of like, you know, welcome to the faith, welcome to, you know, I'm so proud of you for choosing, you know, God, and all kinds of stuff, as if I'm new, basically, like I'm a new Christian. But a lot of people don't know, which is why I'm sharing my testimony now, that I have always known God. I have always known the Gospels. I am well aware of the Bible. When I was little, there was a lot of dabbling, I'm going to say. There was a lot of dabbling in different religions. I do have pictures of multiple things. So I have a picture of my dad when he was trying to be Mormon, and I have pictures of myself and my siblings being baptized in the Catholic Church. And so, like, you know, along the way, we were trying to get, it's like we knew we were missing something. My family knew, like my parents knew they were missing something, and they were trying to find what they're missing, but they weren't quite there yet. It wasn't until we were living in East Harlem that, which I don't know, obviously, the full story of this, but this, remember, is just my perspective. So from my perspective, I remember going to this church for the first time and seeing this pastor, and this pastor had tattoos, and he was bald, and he spoke like how he spoke. He dressed how he dressed. I mean, not quite. But he wore like jeans and t-shirts and, you know, baseball caps and stuff to preach, essentially. And so this was my first like real wholesome beginning relationship with, you know, Jesus, and knowing who he was and stuff like that. So this for me was my core relationship and my core introduction to Jesus, that really, like, I felt that this was when I felt like, you know, this is for me. This was, I relate to this. I feel like very attached to this. You know, it's just that, I don't know how to explain it, but it's like, you know, that that's meant for you, and you know that you're brought back to something that it was kind of taken away kind of, but you're being introduced to it and it was meant for you, like a little puzzle piece, you know? And so that was my first introduction of that. And I remember I was very, very into it. Like, I was very into the music. I felt very in tune with it. I was very into learning about the stories. You know, we were learning about the Gospels. We were learning about, I mean, that's pretty much the basis of it. We were learning the Gospels. We were learning about Acts. We were learning about what happened, you know, and why these things happened, all the different stories. And you know, we were learning it in a way that we could relate to it. And so it felt very, you know, it was just a life-changing thing. And I think I don't remember how old I was. I think I was in like 4th grade or something. 4th or 5th grade. I think I was in 4th grade when they first came. And then I remember that summer I had gone to a camp, like a Christian camp. And it was a legitimate Christian camp that I'm pretty sure everybody in the time was probably doing, if you were in that era where. So anyway, I was at this church and everything was going well for the most part, and even my family was doing well for the most part from what I could tell. I feel like this was a very like, it just brought us more together and things like that. Now, I feel like the pastor, so it was a pastor, a main pastor, and then it was the pastor's son and his family, and they would, you know, preach and stuff like that. And eventually they had to, I guess, go back home, or like, you know, go on another mission or something. I'm not sure what happened to them, but they were replaced. And once they were replaced, it just did not feel the same anymore. We had a new pastor and we tried to stay with it, but she was not as in tune. I feel like she was very much more preaching at us as opposed to, like, you know, relating and making everything relatable. Like, you just feel that, you know, like certain churches will be certain, like a feeling of home for you. And unfortunately, she was not it. There's nothing against her. It's just like, I don't know. She just was not for me personally. And I don't think she was for my family either. So we ended up not going to that church anymore. And it was fine because my mom ended up going to the military later on anyway. So that was that as far as that. But that's pretty much the core of how I became to know God, Jesus, the stories, the Gospels, all that kind of stuff. That was when I learned. So now, I had the basis, right? The knowledge. Was I reading my Bible? No. But was I still into Jesus? Yes. I was very much into Jesus. I was very much into watching movies about the Gospels. I was very much into still listening to the music, like non-secular music. But did I still listen to secular music? Yes. But we're going to get into that because my entire, I don't know how to explain it, but like I took what I learned very seriously. And I felt like when I was learning at that time, so 4th, 5th, and 6th grade, when we were at that church, I felt very attached to Jesus because I felt like I was set apart, not knowing what that meant at that time, but, you know, looking back based on what I know now. So I was always different. I was always set apart. And, you know, I was always the nerdy one. I was always the goody-goody. I was always the, I don't know what people would call it, but, you know, I was just different. I was always different. I always had that, like, conscience in me that, like, no, that's not right. I don't want to do that. That kind of thing. And little did I know that I was probably, like, you know, the Holy Spirit telling me you don't belong there. And then, you know, as I got older and as I got more detached from, when I got detached from the church, I still went and was still different. You know what I mean? So, in high school, still set apart. I was still different. I, was never the type to want to do anything really bad. And when I was put into situations of like peer pressure, I look like a loser. You know what I'm saying? So that's pretty much how it was for me. But I did not know that it was because I was different. I just didn't want to do those things until I met my husband now. Like, a lot of things changed then. But that is for a whole different video, because that's a completely different thing. But I will say that there's a reason for everything happening, and a testimony would not be a testimony without all these things, like all these different difficulties happening in your life and stuff like that. But I think that the main point of my testimony today is to say that I have always known who Jesus was, and I'm going to talk mostly about what brought me back, because restoration is a big part of what is happening now. And I feel like all those things before, there's a reason for everything. There's a reason for everything, okay? And I feel very blessed to have, at the time where things were hard, obviously I was upset, I was confused, I didn't understand. But now looking back, it's like I feel so blessed. I feel blessed even for all the bad things happening, because it brought me to who I am today. Like, I am so strong today. I am so strong, and I feel so blessed, and I feel so happy, and that's why I'm showing this, okay? So don't let the bad things get to you, okay? Don't be a victim to anything bad. Like, just know that there's a reason for everything. He makes things happen, I'm telling you. Now I want to get into what brought me back. So between the time that I learned about Jesus and being Christian and stuff like that, I was not fully aware of what Christianity, like being a Christian, meant, because I had not read my Bible. Like, I had not read a Bible for myself, okay? I was always taught by sermons, by preachers, by others, and I feel like reading the Bible for yourself is extremely important, because you are learning for yourself, and you are hearing for yourself the words, and it's going to hit you differently because of what is going on in your life. Obviously, everybody's going to be reading the same scriptures, but it's not going to hit you the same, because you're not going to be going through the same thing as somebody else. You know what I'm saying? So the Bible, yes, it's like over 2,000 years of knowledge, okay? It's so much knowledge in there. But every time you read it, it's going to hit differently. So for example, my favorite book in the Bible is Job. That's the one that I had read multiple times. Even though I had not read the entire Bible yet, I remember reading Job because I learned about it when I was younger. And I was like, man, like, what? That's crazy. Like, his family died, and he's still so faithful. And it was just always so shocking to me. And so I would read that verse the most. And then in my adulthood, when I read it, that's when I felt more impacted. So it's just like when you're reading things, it's going to change based on what you're going through, what you have been through, what part of your life you're in now, all that kind of stuff. And with that, dude, there's so much I can say. Okay, I have so much to say. So much. I don't think it's going to all fit in here, but I will say that a lot of my adulthood was very lukewarm, okay? So lukewarm Christianity is basically what I was doing. So I knew I was Christian. I would consider myself Christian. I knew who God was. I had a relationship with him, but it was not deep enough, okay? When you have a deep enough relationship with Jesus, let me tell you, you will give up so much. I had not given up enough, in my opinion. Like, I was not, no. There became a point that we were just, getting intoxicated a lot, especially moving to Italy. I was like detached from my family. Plus, a lot of things happened right before I left the States and came to Italy. So I took all of these things, different aspects of my life, and made myself a victim. And because I made myself a victim, I was trying to fill this void with, you know, drinking. Oh man, it was a hard week and I miss my mom. And look at all the stuff that happened. You know what? Let's just go have a drink. Let's just go. And so that's what we were filling our time with, our void. And I was doing it in a way that, like, obviously I wouldn't get so intoxicated that I can't be a mom and be a wife. I was still doing all these things properly, but that's kind of like a functioning, I wasn't alcoholic, I don't think, I don't know, but it was a functioning one for sure. And it was so bad. And anyway, yeah, I was one of those Christians, you know, very lukewarm. And I was a Christian that still put my own culture before my Christianity. So this is what that means. If you are somebody who believes in saging and, you know, the beads, wearing the little beads, the evil eye, okay, I was one of those, okay? I was with you. Don't be mad at yourself, okay? A lot of people are unaware that those things are actually related. I'm looking down because I have notes, because I was reading and I had this like revelation, and it has a lot to do with what brought me back. So despite drinking, despite all the, you know, things that I was doing, I was unknowingly doing it, okay, by the way. So like the beads and the evil eye, obviously I didn't know at the time that it was related to witchcraft. I just thought it was a cultural thing. And so, especially here in Italy, there's a lot of evil eyes everywhere. Aren't you guys, like, isn't this supposed to be like one of the most religious countries ever? But anyway, like I said, cultural. But anyway, what brought me back was that despite all of that, you know, at the core of who I am, I have always, always, always been the type of person to like look out for people, okay? So drinking aside, gatherings aside, you know, I always wanted people to feel better about themselves and their situations, because I never wanted anybody to feel as empty or sad or depressed or anything that I have felt, because trust me, I have felt those things in an extreme way, and the type of person to make you want to laugh so that you don't feel sad, or I will bake you things or cook for you or do these things just so you feel some type of, you know, a sense of community and you're not feeling alone, because a lot of these things that I did was because I was feeling lonely and like something was missing, all that kind of stuff. I need water. I will say too that that I have always been this way. I have always done what they would say is ministry in the mundane. Ministry in the mundane is like looking out for your neighbors, looking out for your people, especially being a military spouse, military community. Community should come first, which I'm going to make a whole separate video about the military spouse community, because what has happened to the military spouse community, oof, we need to talk about that. But anyway, back to testimony. So okay, I was reading one day, okay, I was reading Mark, okay, Mark is one of the Gospels, and if you have no idea what I'm talking about, the Gospels is basically the story of Jesus, you know, from when he was young, born, you know, he was born, how he was raised, what he did to spread the, you know, God's word, and talk about the kingdom of heaven, and then how he was crucified, rose from the grave, and, you know, all that kind of stuff. So Mark chapter 8, is when he was traveling with the disciples to Bethsaida, and he came across a blind man, okay? And Mark chapter 8, verse 23, he says he took the blind man by the hand and led him outside the village, okay? So there was a blind man. Jesus was like, let me guide you outside the village, okay? Now the blind man was blind, okay? Do you understand what I'm saying? The man was blind. There was a man who was blind in a village, okay? Jesus was like, can I take you by the hand and lead you outside the village? And the blind man was like, oh, for sure, okay? He did not know. He did not realize who Jesus was yet. He gave this man his faith to lead him outside this village, okay? Stay with me, okay? He had no idea where he was being led, but he was like, he just gave him the faith. He was like, take me out this village if you want to take me, okay? So he had no choice but to work by faith and not by sight because he was blind, okay? All right. Now, Jesus took him out of the village because, I'm reading my notes, okay? Took him out of the village because he was in an environment that was hindering him from being able to really be led by Jesus. So Jesus touched him. Now, if you were reading the prior to this, when Jesus touched people, they were instantly healed just by his touch. You know, there was another woman who literally touched his garment, and she had so much faith that she stopped bleeding immediately. So this man was in such a the blind man was in such a terrible environment that even the touch of Jesus, it didn't really relieve, like he didn't have his sight back just by the touch. Yeah, okay? So he had to be taken away from such a crappy environment and be led out, okay, for anything to work. So he was led. Jesus took him by the hand, led him outside of that trash environment, okay? Led him outside of the village in order for him to be able to see, okay? It says, the blind man's eyes were wiped with Jesus' spit, and Jesus asked if he could see anything. And the blind man was like, I see people, but they look like walking trees, okay? How in the world would a blind man know what people look like unless he could see before? Okay? Let that soak in, okay? Soak it in. How did a blind man know what people would look like or what trees would look like unless he could see before, right? Okay. Jesus then placed his hands. They're outside of the village, remember? They're away from the village now. Jesus put his hands on the blind man's eyes, and his sight was immediately restored. Okay? If you didn't know, you can't really be restored something unless you already had it before, which means the blind man at one point could see. So he knew what people look like. He knew what trees look like. Okay? But his vision had to be restored. Do you understand where I'm going with this? Do you understand? He had to be led away from his environment to be restored. Okay? Jesus said to the blind man, do not go back to that village. Okay? You do not belong there. Okay, do you guys understand where I'm going with this? Okay? I have always felt very set apart. Okay? Always. I've always felt very set apart. Okay? There's reasons why I never belonged into certain groups of people. Okay? I was in a group that was very, very toxic, okay? And I don't think that they meant to be, maybe they didn't realize it, but I was just going along with it because I didn't want to feel alone, okay? I didn't want to feel lonely, but then I started to get blinded, okay? I was getting blinded by who I really was And it's my own fault because remember, I said I became a victim of things. So once I moved to Italy, I was like, oh, I'm away from my family and blah, blah, blah. I feel lonely. My husband was working a lot. He was working pretty far. Blah, blah, blah. I became a victim. And because I became a victim, I became blinded. And then I became blinded, and I was in this environment where I didn't know really how to get out, right? And then once again, Isaiah 60:22, in time, the Lord will make it happen, okay? And I kept seeing that. Even though I was blinded, I could still see that. You know what I'm saying? I was in a village that I did not belong in, okay? And I could tell. And the only way that I belonged in that village is by doing certain things, that I didn't always agree with. And what's funny is that I can really pinpoint the time that things were starting to change, and I remembered that I was set apart. Okay, I fully remember sitting at a little dinner that I was having, and there was a conversation going on, and they were agreeing, and I was the one that I was like, wait a minute, I don't agree with that. And I said it, and the rest of the time was like very quiet. And then it was kind of like that, where I was kind of like, wait a minute, I don't agree with that. Wait a minute, I don't agree with that either. And it was just like, I kept sticking to that. And then, things progressively, it got worse and worse and worse to where, there was a big drama, there was a big, and I'm over here like, why is this happening? Obviously, I resulted in a lot of confusion. I was very confused. I was very upset. I was crying because I didn't understand, what I did or what I was doing, but I was unknowingly being taken out of my village, okay? Being taken out of an environment that I did not belong, and at the time I was, still blind, but I was trying to see alone. Okay, does that make sense? Before all of this, let me just preface this. Before all of the drama and the realizing, I had started praying really hard because something had happened in summer of 2023, like between May and summer. Something really bad had happened. And the only thing that I could think to do was pray really hard. I was praying so hard that I was crying, and I was like, please, God, please help me. Do whatever. I literally said, do whatever needs to be done to help me, because, this comes before anything, all this kind of stuff. I'm hoping that you understand what I'm saying. But anyway, I was praying so hard. I was crying. And then that's when these series of events, that's when I started thinking like, wait, I don't agree with that. I don't agree with that either. And then eventually I would stop drinking, right? So I would drink less and less and less. So I had stopped drinking alcohol for the most part because, there's a whole thing about spirits. Literally, alcohol is a spirit. And so I was like, you know what? Maybe I should just stop drinking. So for a while I had stopped drinking, and that's when I started seeing like, oh wait, like I don't agree with any of this stuff. And then that's when a lot more bad things happened. And then I fell again because, I'm not perfect, okay? I'm not Jesus Christ. I needed Jesus, but I'm not him, okay? So obviously I'm going to mess up. We're all going to mess up. We're all going to sin. But I literally needed to be held like a child by the hand, get me outside of this village. And that's what he did. He led me outside of my village and showed me, you don't belong there. Do not go back, okay? And then I was what? I was restored, because you cannot be restored if you did not know what it was like before, okay? The blind man, he obviously could see before because his vision was restored. He knew what trees look like. He knew what people look like. I was blinded for so long, but I knew what Jesus Christ looked like. I knew what he meant, and I knew about like the amazing things that God could do, okay? I never gave up on God or Jesus. I just didn't give him my all as I gave to other people. You know what I'm saying? So I knew I was doing good, and I always had him, but instead of having him first in what I do, I was kind of having him in the back of my mind, like, you know, thank you God for another day. But then I would go on later and like drink. You know what I'm saying? Doing things that I didn't agree with just so I would not feel lonely, all that kind of stuff. But when the time comes, I, the Lord, will make it happen. And he made it happen. And now I'm restored. And now I read my Bible. Okay. Mark chapter 8. Okay. Go read it. It's good. It's so good that I rambled on for like what feels like forever. And I still have so much to say. I mostly just wanted this to be how I got back. Okay. I didn't want to put details. I don't like to do all that kind of stuff. I was just, the point of what I was saying was that I was in an environment that I did not belong, and that is what brought me back. So sometimes you're going to go through things and you're going to be confused. You're going to be lost. Why did this happen? I don't understand. I'm a good person. I looked out for these people, blah, 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 blah. But everything happens for a reason. I need to put this pencil down before I poke my eyeball. Oh gosh, the water I just chugged. But anyway, everything happens for a reason, okay? And I feel very blessed that even though at the time I didn't understand, okay, I was very lost, I was very confused by what was happening with people who I cared wholeheartedly about, I looked out for. You know, we all looked out for each other, but there was a reason why I did not belong in that environment, and I needed to be taken out of it. And I'm brought here now, and it will only get better from here. And, you know, my husband and I have, you know, this has brought my husband and I to be closer because he saw that he's always known how good I am. Like inside, I'm a good person. I have a big heart, and time again, people have like trampled on it. And, you know, it really made him realize that even though people time and time again have done that, I never change in the way that my heart will always look out for people. So, you know, even though I was, you know, before when I was drinking a lot and, you know, partying or whatever you want to call it, and, you know, not putting God first, I kind of was always I was always Christian, okay? So when I was looking out for, you know, whoever I was looking out for, that's because I was a Christian. That was the Christian in me looking out for you, okay? So people want to make fun of, oh my gosh, she's Christian now. I've always been Christian, okay? And me looking out for you and me, you know, making sure you're okay, that was because that's what it was, okay? I don't want people to feel sad. I don't want people to feel alone, and I will always say that. You know, the things that I do, it's because of God that I do that. But now I wasn't like a good image of a Christian. And I think that's where people got lost, and why people were so confused is because I wasn't walking in the way I thought that I was by looking out for these people. I thought that I was by, you know, making sure and checking on them and, you know, going out of my way. So I thought that that was enough, but obviously it wasn't. And that's all I have to say about that. If you have questions about anything, or you want to know more details, or, you know, all that kind of stuff. But this was just, I feel like, a lot anyway. And that's just pretty much my testimony in the way of like restoration, how I came back, how I've been restored. Wasn't that so good? I feel better. I feel good. I feel like most people will get this. And yes. If you have questions though about like military type things, I will still be doing that. We are PCSing soon. Little PCS dance. If you have questions about that kind of stuff, or if you have questions about this kind of stuff, you know, testimonies, any part, marriage, me and the husband, all that kind of stuff, just let me know. We will get into it. And I will be making a video about the military community because I don't know what happened. I don't know what happened here, but we're going to get into it next video. But thank you for watching. If you stayed throughout this whole video, thank you. And until the next one.